Good morning, everyone. This is one of the practice problems that was discussed in my WhatsApp and Facebook groups. If you would like to join my WhatsApp or Facebook groups, please see the description of this video. If you find this video helpful, please do not forget to like and subscribe to my channel. So let's get started on this question. The degree of difficulty of this question is not that high. However, there are some common mistakes that people end up making, which results in them getting this question wrong. And since the degree of difficulty of this question is not that high, it has an adverse effect on the overall GMAT score. So let's read through the question quickly and then we'll think of a strategy to solve the question. So we are given that x is a positive integer. So we know x is positive, which means it cannot be 0. And it cannot be a negative integer. And we are asked what is the units digit of x to the power of 24. Now, as soon as you see these two words, units digit and a power, you have to start thinking about the concept of cyclicity, because every units digit out there, which goes from 0 to 9, have a cyclicity in which the units digit appear in different powers of that number. So as soon as you see this question, the first concept that should pop up in your mind is about cyclicity. And then we are given two statements to figure out if we can find the units digit of x to the power of 24. Now, here are the important points of this question. The question asks what is the units digit of x to the power of 24, and the only information given about x is that it's a positive integer. Couple of things for the data to be sufficient. One, it has to be a unique value. The units digit has to be a unique value, and as long as we know that the units digit is a unique value, it doesn't matter what the value of x is. And if that is confusing, just look at it this way. The units digit of 4 square is 6. The units digit of 6 square, which is 36, is also 6. So even though 4 and 6 are two different numbers or possible values of x, the units digit of their square is 6. So since the units digit is unique, even though we couldn't really find the value of x, this information is sufficient to answer the question because we always get the unit digit as same. Okay, so here is our strategy to solve this problem. Number one, we are going to focus on the units digit of x to the power of 24, not x itself. Number two, I am going to consider all possible values of x, not just what I think is possible, and I have to make sure that I avoid the mistake of not considering all values. Number three, I'm going to try to avoid all kinds of assumptions because this is a data sufficiency question, so I have to work with facts, not assumptions. And by avoiding assumptions, I'm going to avoid all kinds of traps that could be part of this question. And at the end of the solution, I will take you through some of the traps and common mistakes people make in solving this kind of a question. And to remind you, this is not a very difficult question. So if you get this kind of question wrong in GMAT, it would have an adverse effect on your overall score because GMAT is an adaptive algorithm and it would imagine that you are not able to solve simple difficulty level questions. We'll start with statement number one. We are given that x is even, right? We are also given that x is positive. So that means x cannot be 0. So can we discard 0 altogether? A lot of people do, and that is one of the traps in this question. If you do discard 0, then you are discarding not just 0 because this question is about units digit. You are discarding 10, 20, 30, and any number that has a units digit of 0. So bottom line, you cannot discard 0. So what are the even numbers possible then? 0. And what is the cyclicity of the units digit for each of these values? And this is the important concept that you have to remember. And I'm not going into details of cyclicity. I think you can find it in any book, and I can create a separate video for it. The cyclicity for 0 is 1, which means no matter what the power is, a number with units digit of 0 will always result in 0. The cyclicity for 2 is 4, which means the units digit repeats after every fourth power. For 4 it is 2, for 6 it is 1 again, and for 8 it is 4 again. So let's calculate the units digit for something x to the power of 24. Now you have to realize that 24 is a multiple of 4. So we are looking at each of these units raised to the power of 4, and that unit will cycle through, right? So for 0, the units digit will be 0. For 2, 2 to the power of 4 is 16. So the units digit is 6. For 4, we are looking at 4 to the power of 4, right? The units digit will be 6 again, and you will find that for 6 and 8 also, the units digit is always 6. This is the property that is usually not given in any of the cyclicity concept, that all even numbers have 6 as the units digit when they are raised to the power of 4 or a multiple of 4, except 0, of course. And this is why this answer is insufficient. As you can see, the units digit is same for every even digit except, so there are two possibilities, 0 and 6, and since there are two possibilities, this is not sufficient. Okay, now let's take statement number 2. Statement number 2 says x and 3x do not have the same units digit. So again, what are the possibilities of units digit? If you forget about statement number 1, then you have all 9 units digit possible. And when do x and 3x not have the same digit? So 0, 3 multiplied by anything 0 would have the same units digit. So 0 is out. 1 is possible, 2 is possible, 3 is possible. In fact, except for 0 and 5, all the other units digit are entirely possible. And since these are, some of them are even and some of them are odd, the units digit would be sometimes even and sometimes odd. Hence we know that this will be insufficient, because sometimes we will get an even answer, sometimes we will get odd answers to the units digit. So even 2 is not sufficient. However, when you combine 1 and 2, you are limited to a number of choices. Since x is even, all of the odd quantities go away. So, okay, so I have crossed out all the odd quantities. Since in 2 it is given that x and 3x do not have the same units digit, 0 goes away, and the only thing remaining is 2, 4, 6 and 8 as our possibilities. And for 2, 4, 6 and 8, we already saw that the units digit for a power which is a multiple of 4 would be 6. So now we have a unique answer, that is 6. And hence, when you combine 1 and 2, it is sufficient to answer the question, because you get a single value of units digit possible. So let's look through some of the common traps and common mistakes that people make. Okay, so number 1 common trap and mistake is focusing on x rather than the units digit of x to the power of 24, and making the assumption that if we have multiple values of x, then you would get multiple values of x to the power of 24. And we talked about it at the start of our strategy that we are not going to do it, but a lot of people make that common mistake. Number 2, x is given to be a positive integer. So x cannot be 0. However, that doesn't mean you discard 0 as the possibility. That is another common trap people get into by discarding 0 as a possibility, because there will still be numbers with 0 as units digit. And finally, not realizing or not knowing that for numbers with even units digit other than 0, the fourth power always has 6 as the units digit. It is generally not given in any of the cyclicity tutorials, and it is not very intuitive that that would happen unless you actually write it down, and that is another mistake.